season merrier when you add postpaid to internet. Unwrap a new Samsung smartphone for only $29. Plus, we're giving you 50% off your mobile bill. And win even more goodies with our Spin the Wheel Christmas promotion. This Christmas, the rewards are on us. Add postpaid to your internet plan today in-store or visit discoverflow.co for more info. Terms and conditions apply. Flow, we keep your Christmas rhythm flowing.
WhatsApp us or call us at 457-9997. Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
And it's time for us to hear commentary from Doc as we enter another segment of our Flow Activated Mornings program here on WEFM. So, Doc, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and my fellow co-hosts.
No, we are family. We are family.
And family.
I'll let him get an invitation to the reunion.
He's saying that to get an invitation. Bring food. You know, listeners, 2 days ago, many of you would have heard that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has signed an executive order to reschedule cannabis. And many of you may be wondering, what does this mean? Well, I want you to understand that in 1961, as a matter of fact, the world internationally came together to regulate several drugs, including cocaine, opium products, and cannabis. And it did something very interesting in 1961. And it brought, with this international treaty, the regulation of these drugs under international control, irrespective of what countries wanted to do. It did give some countries, like India, that had cannabis as a form of medicine, and other countries some 15 to 20 years to come to grips with that, but that they should eventually come under this single convention. Now, other treaties have since been developed, but what a 1961 treaty did, it established also 4 schedules. Schedule 1 was the most stringent of the schedules. Schedule 2 was for milder narcotic drugs. Schedule 3 was for light drugs. And they had a special Schedule 4 of drugs that have absolutely no medical value whatsoever, will never have any medical value, should never be used medically. Now, you know what they did? They went and put cannabis in Schedule 1, and they had certain other drugs, but they also put cannabis into Schedule 4. But guess what? Schedule 4 did not have opium, heroin, morphine. It didn't have cocaine in it because they accepted that these drugs were drugs that could have medical use. But cannabis, no, never. Now, I want to fast forward because during my own medical career, I have seen where the opium products were developed into things like fentanyl. And I could go through a whole set of names of drugs that have caused such abuse. Last year, fentanyl killed 106,000 people from drug overdose. Whereas it's not known that cannabis actually kills persons. Now, clearly, if somebody is driving a car under the influence of alcohol or under the influence of cannabis, you can kill yourself and kill somebody. But you don't have overdoses in the same way. Now, why I'm saying this is that there was a clear distinction made in relation to cannabis that was different to that of opium products and to cocaine. And today, cocaine, crack, and various other forms, and opium products I've mentioned to you have caused devastating problems. Now, this doesn't mean that cannabis is totally safe and that young persons and so forth should be guided and so to stay away from this by any means. But one of the things about Schedule 1 drugs, it's so difficult to do research. And as I've gone around the Caribbean, doctors have asked me, where is the evidence? Remember when COVID was out, the vaccines, they asked, where's the double-blind, placebo-controlled studies? Well, you can't do them in the same way because it's hard to do that with cannabis. Very difficult to do studies unless cannabis is in Schedule 3, which allows for that research. So the announcement by Donald Trump 2 days ago that they're rescheduling cannabis is a very interesting move, but I want to go further on this because at the same time, we know that several other countries have legalized recreationally, and Canada is, say, the global leader. I will say that in the Caribbean, St. Vincent is the Caribbean leader. But what may be another motive behind rescheduling is that it will now allow for legal banking. It will now allow for other things to take place that couldn't occur before. But it also will allow for American companies that have received legalization in a state that has legalized it to also want to go global. And so there's a thinking that the Caribbean has to be very concerned in one respect, that visitors who may be in a state that's legalized would want to travel with their cannabis. That persons living in a state may throw a few products in a barrel or in a box and send it down to other parts of the world. But more so in the same way now that you see countries want to dominate artificial intelligence or to dominate cryptocurrency, there seems to be some evidence that the cannabis international trade, that some entities also want to do that too, and this rescheduling may well allow or push them in that direction. One thing that's good for St. Vincent is that we have a very high quality profile. We are fairly well regulated, and Vincentian product is considered to be quite good. But whether it can withstand the challenges of international competition, I suppose that that's something that has to receive some serious planning so as to make sure that we, who used to be a net exporter of, I would say, illegal cannabis, now doesn't become the net importer, because the thinking is that product coming from America may be better or safer, or whatever the case might be. And already we have seen a few inclinations in some other countries, but I wanted to comment on this so as to put this in the framework that the work certainly continues in this regard.
Okay. So as you speak on that, it drew my attention back to an article that came out on in the social newspaper for the weekend regarding some pharmacies. Let me see if I could put it up properly. So Sergeant Sean Chandler said some pharmacies that sell medicinal cannabis are breaking the law. Many of them are not in keeping with the regulation as it pertains to that aspect of the business. The veteran police officer said that some pharmacy outlets that have the privilege to sell medicinal cannabis to people are selling more than the allowed quantity and are selling to people who do not have the proper documentation, prescription, or medicinal cannabis identification card. Exactly how is this supposed to be monitored and regulated?
Yeah. When we first started off, Roleza, guess what? The doctors used to have to sit down and write out 3 prescriptions in triplicate. And then the person had to take it to the pharmacy. And it was very complicated. Doctors were telling us, oh, Dr. Thompson, other medications, I could just quickly write a prescription. With this one, I've got to do a whole set of CBD. It's taking me 15, 20 minutes just to deal with the write-up. I better not bother with that. I might as well go back to prescribing fentanyl and other things like that. And we said, no. At the time, though, COVID came in and patients started to get prescriptions online. And we had developed an online system in which persons could actually doctors could prescribe, and they were happy about it. It saved them a lot of time. The patients were happy about it too. And with cannabis, you're able to have, let's say, repeat prescriptions so that somebody they can have 3 refills. So with a refill, the pharmacist has it, so the patient may go back and basically get a refill without having to get another prescription and seeing a doctor again, paying him $60, $80 for that. There's some products that we call CBD, and products called THC. The THC is the one that can give you intoxication. The CBD doesn't intoxicate you, but has real profound properties too. And today in most pharmacies, CBD products are over the counter. They're actually over the counter. You can go and pick them up and you don't need a prescription for them at all. So what I was saying, modern medicine, we've developed online system that a patient could actually call. In matter of fact, St. Vincent offers something for what we call visiting qualified patient. A patient comes in from America and so forth, could actually call into a doctor, and the doctor could assess them and see if they also have a prescription or a card saying that I'm a medical patient, they basically are able to have a fast track in terms of getting their prescription filled and getting filled electronically. So somebody who's observing may not see a prescription pass like a physical thing. But now, I think within these systems, you always will find some little thing but I think that the vast majority of persons are doing it correctly.
So you don't think that from the end, whether it's the dispenser or the customer?
We've been speaking, let me just finish it. We've been speaking to a number of pharmacies and basically making sure that they do. And I think some of this does take place. But I think that there is some wrong messaging to think that somebody always has to provide a prescription. I remember outlining that sometimes the prescription is online. Sometimes the confidentiality of it is that it's already been done. And somebody who's making an observation may not necessarily see a prescription pass. And we've had lots and lots of discussions with the police and with the DPP. And there's a lot of updating that still has to take place, even to veteran policemen, as regards what the process is like and so.
Do you think that there is a possibility of this system being abused, right? And I'm putting this in the context.
There is.
Right, but I'm putting it in the context of, all right, so if I have to get a particular prescription from a doctor, I don't even know what tablet to call. Let me just say Advil or something, right? You're going to be told that you can take this 3 times a day and you're not supposed to exceed a particular quantity. But I don't know if persons have the same opinion when it comes to marijuana or medicinal cannabis, right? Because persons mostly use it as a recreational use. But there isn't a thing to say, well, necessarily if you overdo. Now, yes, we do know what can happen to persons who overdo or who overuse. But given that it's being dispensed at pharmacies, isn't
there's
how
a
to
risk.
phrase it?
I could cut you short. There is a risk. And that risk,
There's what risk though?
there is a risk of one, the patient going and taking too much than what is prescribed.
And the pharmacist not paying as much attention because you're not looking at it with the same sort of
yes,
seriousness as you would with other prescription
true.
drugs.
And that is why I brought up this whole thing about rescheduling, because they are now going to put cannabis like it's Tylenol with codeine, very similar to what you're talking about, so that the old system of the stringent so forth processes may well be looking to change. I know that there's been some evidence that new governments in the region have suggested going with more liberalization of the process. And it'll be interesting to see what takes place in this regard. But there's always that risk. But I want to point out, we've since found out that there are certain conditions, anxiety disorders, something called PTSD, things called sleep disorder, were once considered just recreational because they were not considered as real illnesses. Post-traumatic stress syndrome was not considered as real. Anxiety disorders was used for that. I remember in the United States, I had patients who were very, very, very slim due to HIV disease. And guess what? They wanted to use cannabis to stimulate their appetite, to put on weight. Other persons who were slim tried that. There isn't so much evidence, but guess what? A lot of my patients, I saw them put back on their weight. I saw them put back on their weight and they didn't progress towards malnutrition and dying. And so I became a believer and a person who advocated that. But since that time, we found that conditions like anxiety, PTSD, sleep disorders, and you know the amount of people have sleep disorders, about 20% of our population. And so the confidentiality aspect, you may not always know why somebody is taking something, if it is to ease anxiety or if it is just the feeling of getting high. But you have to also discount some of this because of confidentiality. You have to give that benefit of the doubt to the individual so that you don't restrict them from it because you don't believe them. And we have to continue speaking to the pharmacists to reduce that particular risk, and patient education to also deal with that particular risk too, of somebody taking too much or not knowing exactly how to use it and so, because there's a lot of education that takes place with it, but there's always that risk.
All righty. And with that, we are ending this segment of our Flow Activated Mornings program here on WEFM. We'll be back at 9:20 when we would open the phone lines for you to talk to us.
Nothing else sounds as good as
WEFM, the clean, fresh sound.